Welcome to another edition of Tres Leches Radio, representing 1/3 of the clan. You know what, guys? I'm going to go with it. It's Rad Soul, a.k.a. Radimus, representing 1/3 of the trio. Gentlemen, let them know you guys always had cool nicknames.
Yes, sir. B-Stacks in the house on a Sunday afternoon, man. We getting our glory on. Church.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and you know what it is, of course, so the guy, Reminisce here, and welcome back on a very special edition of Tres Leches Radio. Here, this was an episode that we were initially trying to do in February, but due to time constraint, weather constraints, got pushed back to March. But welcome to T.R.O.Y, the Reminisce Review, and the Black History here. So, as you know, obviously this is a hip hop podcast, and this is what we will talk about. But we want to have a special episode, not to dedicate only the trailblazers of hip hop, but some of the forefathers who helped bring hip hop to what we know and love today.
Ja-Rule.
What would I be without you?
Oh, man. It's always been
y'all ain't ready for the album yet right there, but a little snippet. But so as we know, hip hop started in 1973 as far as the earliest stages of it. But let's look at the prehistory of it, the pre-origins. We're going to do like a roundtable discussion, and it's probably going to be several artists going to miss, but we want to definitely hit on some main points. But gentlemen, let's. I know there are probably two artists that you know on top of the dome that were definitely contributors to the early times of hip hop. Who wants to speak on it first?
You want to go B-Stacks? Oh, you want me to? All right, yeah. So if you're talking like origins, I'm gonna go with one that I don't know that you guys are gonna say, because there's an obvious one. I'm gonna let one of y'all speak on. So remember in the voice notes, I said I found something that I did not know existed, and I sounded like I was laughing. So I wanted to actually throw out Muhammad Ali, Mr. Cassius Clay himself. So now there's other options, and that I'm deliberately not saying because they're the most obvious answers. The reason why is, and even before we were prepping for this episode, I've always heard people say like the way he would deliver his shit talk right before boxing, before a boxing match or whatever, you know, like fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee, like we said, he was like rapping when he did that. But he also had, and I did not know this, maybe you guys knew this already, he had an album that he put out in August of 1963 called I Am the Greatest. And it's basically just, you know, he was a very colorful character. You know, he's just doing his humor. One track he has on there, he's basically dissing Sonny Liston, like for the whole track. So they said, like, when I was Googling it, they were saying that, you know, that's credited as like a diss track as back then, you know, because he just has like witty one-liners in there. It's kind of like a battle record, so to speak, but he's doing it in his way in 1963. So he does get credited. Again, I think there's bigger influences, but what he did, people will credit as like the diss record or very early level of rapping with how he delivered his lines. So I wanted to throw that one out mainly because I didn't know that he did the I Am the Greatest album. It's actually available for streaming too. Like it's
wow.
You know, yeah. And it was funny. He was dissing Sonny Liston. And I was laughing. This came out in 63, and I'm not like a boxing buff, but yeah, I'm throwing that one out there because I know it's a little bit of an oddball answer. I do have some other answers here. If I'm throwing out another one, and actually Kanye is the reason I know about this guy, is Gil Scott Heron. So it's as simple as, so I found out about him when Kanye did Late Registration, and he had the song Common did, I'm on my way home. So that's how I found out about Gil Scott Heron. But simply put, when I was researching him, he's literally cited as the first rapper given his style of delivery. He does obviously sing, and but also like for his social and political content. You see, and we'll get into that one further, following generations kind of took what he did and went further. But yeah, I'm throwing out Muhammad Ali and Gil Scott Heron.
Definitely, definitely two dope ones. Yeah, I remember vaguely about that Muhammad Ali one. I think even ESPN or one of the stations years back had, you know, even though it was like a sub video thing, you know, considering him like the first quote unquote rapper, because, you know, we're talking about the bravado, when we're talking about like, you know, the shit talking and this, because when we look at hip hop, it's competition. So it's all about who's the best, who's the nicest. And that was what Muhammad Ali was projecting. So when we look at that, you know, you definitely see those influences. And Gil Scott, I mean, what more can you say about Gil Scott and his influence with the social commentary, with the samples, especially with Kanye, and, you know, Dylan, so many other people who use his works over the years. So
Sky Zoo used them as recently as Retropolitan. 6 classics.
Mm-hmm. 6 classics, man. So yeah, for sure.
Inside joke. Yeah. Enough love to Gil, man. The Last Poets, you know, you know, both of those collectives kind of worked the early like MC before MC was like a thing. You know, the whole like art of how like hip hop kind of came is just like, it's not like one clear answer, you know what I mean? Because you know, you got your guys like Muddy Waters, you got your guys like, you know, Little Walter, all those Stax artists back in the day, you know, bebop jams. Of course, you got like James Brown. But for this one, for this round, I wanted to go with the P-Funk, man. You know, George Clinton and Parliament. Me and Brand's actually got a chance to see him live.
All more music called Birthday Flow.
Yeah. So that was like a nice bucket list. George, you know, I mean, he's up there with James Brown as far as like who sampled who. And you know, you see the dichotomy of like his music background and how P-Funk basically became G-Funk. And then, you know, even now with like Kendrick's Pimp Butterfly or countless like D'Angelo albums. Outkast, Common, you know, it's his dust is sprinkled everywhere. And then like George actually, even the band members, so you have like Bootsy Collins, who, you know, who moves on to have his own huge career, who started with James Brown. You got Maceo, the legend, Maceo Parker, you know what I mean, who played with James Brown later with the JBs, like jazz and funk legends. You know, these guys are like on that like Mount Rushmore. So I would definitely credit them as far as like that sound of that stuff that kind of like helped hip hop get a soil per se to eventually grow.
Because you could see the seeds later on that took it and continued with it.
Word. Exactly.
Yeah. For sure. Who else you got besides P-Funk legend, my dude?
So I had to go with I also did Eddie Hazel. I forgot to mention him. So Eddie Hazel was actually the vocalist side of Parliament. Just to educate people, like Parliament Funkadelic was like 2 groups, but because of legal shit and drugs.
Okay.
Drugs.
They had to just like create another group, you know, in order to tour. You know, like they were just, you know, bad deals and just mayhem. So they had to have another band to tour. And that turned into Funkadelic. So Funkadelic is more of the electronic side. Parliament is more like the groove, R&B, harder side. So Eddie Hazel, I kept it in this whole camp for this particular segment. So I went with him, man, because he's the voice. Because George, you know, we don't really hear George like that a lot on stuff. You know, he's more like background, like Atomic Dog. You hear some stuff, but all like the flashlight and red light, we are the light spot. That's all Eddie Hazel singing. You know, that's all him.
Yeah.
So he was, and y'all, you know, I don't think we don't give him props enough. Like I don't hear his name a lot.
Yeah.
So I decided
he's getting it right here today.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Eddie
Get
Hazel.
the flowers. Yeah. For sure. And it's funny because you were talking about, as far as the music side, bad deals, and everything was so prevalent, you know, during that time, even today. But the one guy who I will mention now, because it's a nice segue, is Sam Cooke. And actually the episode, this kind of came from him because I was watching, and if you haven't watched it, definitely worth watching on Prime, you know, The One Night in Miami, you know, with him, Muhammad Ali, you know what I mean, you know, Malcolm and Jim Brown. But we forget he was one of the first artists, not that, you know, have his own label, but to own his publishing. And that was so important when we look at artists, especially during that time. And today, how people get, you know, royally screwed because they don't know the contract writing on how publishing, how royalty works. And he was one of the first guys who understood that, you know, and him being a songwriter, you know, more importantly, you know, the works he did, you know, like with like the Rolling Stones and stuff, and understanding that, hey, when they sing this song, I might not be top 10, but this guy's going to shoot me up here just because I wrote that song and I'm getting that residuals. So he was one of the first, businessmen, I think. And then when we look at later on, whether it was the Jay-Z's, the Diddy's, the Master P's, especially understanding the business side of the game itself.
Got it.
Yeah, I was waiting for it. But he belongs.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely on that end.
I didn't know that about Sam Cooke. That's a dope. I didn't know like the business side of that at all. I didn't know that he was. Wow. Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that. I think they, too, after the fact, when you start reading up on them, like if you should watch, if you have it on Netflix, Who Killed Sam Cooke? Very good one, because you got to understand
to Sam Cooke. I think there's like another one. He's got a bunch of docs out.
Yeah, there's a bunch of docs. I mean, that's a good recent one. I think that one came out 2017 or 2018. Yeah. That one came out, because you got to remember his circles. I mean, he wasn't part of Nation of Islam, but he had the influence with Malcolm X. We look at Malcolm X with himself, as far as we look at hip hop, how heavily, even in the early stages, the NOI influence, the 5%er influence, understanding knowledge itself. That's there's Malcolm right there, and a lot of artists to this day are so heavily influenced by his words, his teachings. You look at Muhammad Ali, which was mentioned earlier. That's the same circle, the bravado, the having that confidence, and that's one thing about Muhammad. He had confidence, so we weren't allowed to have that confidence or be bashful, and you want people like, be proud of who you are, do this, you know what I mean? So that was definitely
he went to jail. Yeah, right. Like Muhammad Ali went to jail for denying going into the war, right? Just because like they never did nothing to me. Like
no being Khan never called me a nigger,
Yeah, see, I wasn't gonna say that, but yes, I'm alluding to that.
You're still within the family tree. but the other artist I want to mention too, and then also the movie came out on her recently, Nina Simone. No, Billie Holiday. But you can mention Nina Simone.
But Nina Simone, that's Talib Kweli's favorite.
Yeah, but I meant that, but yeah.
A lot of Kanye.
Shout out to Nina, obviously, but Billie Holiday, Philly's own. I didn't realize she was from Philly too, till like 2 weeks ago. For whatever reason, I always thought she was in New York. But she was a trailblazer in her right as well.
She was born here, but I don't think she was raised here. But hey,
maybe that's why. But yes.
She didn't use the word John in any of her songs. Like
the remix of Strange Fruit, she did. but speaking of Strange Fruit, her having that song, that came out during that time period. We'll talk about. We talk about Fuck Up the Police with NWA or even Two Live Crew. We're talking about like First Amendment rights and stuff. Here she is in her era, Strange Fruit, talking about lynching.
Yeah.
And it didn't get no radio play, but the top tone and topic charted that song to the point where the United States government saying, "Oh, wait a minute, you need to fall back a little bit. We don't want to start."
How dare you tell the truth?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And she stood her ground. And then and when you watch the movie, you kind of see the toll that happened first, her standing that ground and the repercussions, but the fact that she stood her ground, and we look at like Public Enemy, NWA, Kendrick Lamar, Tupac, obviously, that had that, that revolutionary mindset, you know what I mean? And it's Women's Month too. So I definitely wanted to get somebody, in that theme as well, some props and some love for sure.
Shout out to the women.
Every
month, not just March.
Every month.
Yeah,
exactly. But so now we look at the prehistory now. So we're looking at this is 73. Now we're looking at from 73 to 2000, as now we're starting to see the growth of the birth of hip hop. Who do we feel in this time span that has really trailblazed for the culture overall?
I'll throw my two out. First one, I had to go Kool Herc when you said 1973. Thinking about the official birth date of hip hop, August 11th, 1973. But the interesting thing isn't just about Kool Herc, he's credited as inventing looping the break beat off of 2 records to keep the party going, right? But the interesting thing, in Renzo, you mentioned that you just mentioned moments ago, it's Women's History Month in March, right? His sister, Cindy Campbell, funded the party. So even though he was the DJ and technique wise, from a music perspective, a technique that he pretty much created has been innovated as we go forward. So from a technical aspect, that goes to Kool Herc. his sister is the reason why that party was funded and able to happen as well. So, you know, we always hear birthplace of hip hop, Kool Herc, right? And yo, like I bow to that. But also Cindy Campbell, his sister, is the reason why that was able to happen. And then I would, since this is a very large like time frame, like 73 to 2000, the other person who immediately jumped in my mind that I don't think anybody else would have said, when I think of like the more business savvy side, I think Russell Simmons. From a business savvy side, kind of taking what you said a little bit from Sam Cooke, but now and then you throw out like the Master P's, the Jay-Z's, the Irv Gotti's, right? Russell Simmons had Def Jam, right? He started Def Jam with him and Rick Rubin in a college dorm room. They had Def Jam, Def Comedy Jam, Def Poetry. He had the Fat Farm attire. You know how many albums we all have purchased here off the strength from Def Jam? To me, that like, and I think they're credited as being the most legendary label. I think Def Jam was probably one of the first labels that got that big with that level of longevity, and that doesn't happen without Russell Simmons and Rick Rubin. But I mean, I feel like Russell Simmons was like Rick Rubin. I think was like, you know, he was producing the early albums, right? Beastie Boys, LL Cool J, Run DMC. But yeah, like those are my two. Kool Herc, obviously, I'm packaging the two together. Kool Herc and his sister Cindy Campbell, and Russell Simmons for his business savvy, because he created a platform for so many unsigned acts, whether you were an artist, a comedian, and even designers, and he created that platform. So on the business side, he showed you could enterprise. That's like, you know, that's one of the first ones that came to my mind.
For sure.
And I did leave out some of the other obvious ones that I think you guys will say. So
yeah, Russ is a big one. I mean, you know, he had Rush Management, you know, like Def Jam, basically like the hip hop Motown. You know?
Yes, that's the best way to put
it.
Yeah, man.
Easily.
Everybody that went through there, man. If anybody even liked hip hop, you know, because there's some people who liked hip hop for a certain amount of time, and then there's people who just like it always. You bought at least one album in one era off of Def Jam. Seriously.
Easily.
No doubt. Yeah, so piggybacking off that with Kool Herc, I'm gonna go on the other side, the Bronx. I'm gonna go with Africa Bambaataa and the Zulu Nation. Similar to Kool Herc, man, like cornerstone. You know, you can't. There just isn't hip hop without Zulu Nation. You know, I think the good thing about Bam, and you know, we ain't talking about allegations and all that stuff. We talking about
absolutely, you know, contributions.
Yeah, I think the thing with him was just that street connection to the elements of hip hop, like breakdance, graffiti, and MCing, which is like
the elements. Yeah,
it gets lost nowadays, but you really can't forget about those like delicate, simple elements. You know, able to take street kids off a corner and have them doing something productive. Like this guy had gang members, you know, breakdancing, doing graffiti, you know, changing people's lives, you know. So you got to credit Bam, and the Zulu Nation basically was like the shoulder for like Tribe and De La and Native Tongue and Public Enemy to step on, and for them to get everybody else on board. You know, Zulu's like that stepping stone. And for the later end of the era, like into the 2000s, I kind of went random, man. I had to go my first thought, and that was like the whole like I had to go West Coast because I just wanted to show some love to each area.
Right.
I had to go with like Dilated Peoples, man, and like the Beat Junkies and like that whole crew, like that whole LA underground, man. Like at that time, like 99, 98, 2000, 2001, like they were just going so hard, like for hip hop at that time. And then you had like Evidence under that, you know, you had like the Far Eye, you know, the Alcoholics, like it's Exhibit, it's other dudes.
Yeah.
But I really feel like Dilated was like they were the ones though, like they were they had that most powerful impact within that year gap of just like true school LA hip hop. And they had a grip on mainstream, they had a grip on commercial, underground. And I think that they don't really get talked about either. It's funny because they were talked about for a while. They had that light. And then I guess with everything, you know, ebbs and flows, and you kind of really don't hear their name anymore.
Yeah,
but I had
science.
Love the Dilated Peoples.
Yeah, nice shout out to the West. Nice touch.
Yeah. And you think about too, especially like Dilated, the Far, and everything else. It was a good pocket because when people think about West Coast, the first thing you think about is this West Coast G Funk, like we talk about, or Parliament. But you also had that more of that. I wanted to say East
like
Coast
alternative kind of, right?
Like alternative, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're not all gang banging or this. We also have more of the main focus, quote unquote, of the truism of hip hop.
Were they like West Coast native tongues, maybe?
I would say
a very loose
put them in
association.
that same vein.
Yeah.
Put them definitely in that same vein, exactly. And then when you look at Bambaataa, I think one important thing that people don't realize that he united all the gangs in New York, essentially.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the Warriors is kind of loosely based off of that.
They had
you know what I mean? And him to get that truth, and kind of then also because you had, like say, you had the street element of hip hop, obviously, and then how that branched off into further of the evolution. So definitely solid picks there. So I won't keep it West, and I'm gonna show some love to the South.
Dirty.
You know what I mean? So I think, and these two, I think, kind of always both get overshadowed just because of larger acts that maybe came after them. But I want to show love to Eazy-E and Master P. So I'm gonna first start talking about Eazy. So here's a guy, and when you think about it, there's no Dre without Eazy. There's no Cube. There's really no West Coast gangster rap. Outside Ice-T without Eazy. In my humble opinion. Here's a guy, who was a drug dealer, but started seeing that, hey, I don't, I ain't trying to get, killed in the streets, saw a business opportunity in hip hop. Because remember, when we're looking at, because most of the people we spoke on this segment have been generally East Coast. So we were talking about the Bronx, we're talking about New York. Here's a channel, here's a market that nobody has touched. And him realizing, hey, there's nobody speaking for us. I can make a business out of this. I can turn this into profit, And what he did with Ruthless Records, and people forget, like JJ Fad, that was actually the first act that came out.
I didn't know Dre produced for them. Yeah.
So you got JJ Fad that I think went gold off their album. They were even before NWA, even before that was their first act essentially. And shout out to JD Fad, but him understanding here's a pocket here. So then, with the formation of NWA and, given their reality, like we did, and how Chuck D says, rap music was a CNN for Black people and for hip hop culture in general. So we didn't know what was going on. This is before internet, obviously. So imagine we're hearing about gang life and police brutality stuff. And there were prophets about it because you fast forward 92, you got the Rodney King incident, and here's what they're talking like, hey, this is what the police are doing to us over here. We're being brutalized, this, that. And people some people looked at entertainment purposes, other people kind of saying, hey, maybe there's some truth behind it. And we see how prevalent it's still today, when we talk about George Floyd and the other countless acts. So here's these people talking about it, bringing it to the forefront, and being able to be an independent label to have now the majors come to him. He didn't go to the majors came to him. Essentially. And they were able to sell with little to no radio play, be hounded by the FBI. And then when we talk about whatever reviews with Kanye and other rappers associated with presidents, but he's one of the first rappers associated with President Reagan, meeting with Reagan. And that was unheard of. Like, here's this rapper, gangster rapper, meeting with the president, president of the United States. So he was such a trailblazer in so many different arenas, and I think he just gets kind of lost in that shuffle,
man, I always felt like if Eazy would have lived, I and this is like hard to say, but I felt like he could have also been like a diplomat for for conscious politics, it's crazy to say this, but like he was kind of already getting there. Like I think he would have just left music alone. You know what I mean?
He would, yeah. Because even when you look at West Coast, with the black and black and brown was primarily with the black and Mexican tension. He had he was already signing Mexican rappers on the label because he wanted to kind of dead that, like, there's money to be made. Like Frost was on his label. You know what I mean?
Frost, the legend.
And so, and Frost talked about how the connections, what he was trying to do. Black Eyed Peas, they were on Ruthless Records. Like, he wanted to have a West Coast tribe, but it wasn't. It was too soon. Like they didn't want, you know.
Yeah,
but
people don't realize. Yeah,
he realized there was another lane. Like when we talk about dilated, like you said earlier, and everything else, he realized there was two sides of the coin.
You
know, so
and anybody younger than us right now is probably hearing Black Eyed Peas and thinking of like what modern day Black Eyed Peas, and not even thinking like their origins. They were super hip hop, like pre-Fergie. They were super hip hop. Like, was it That's the Joint, That's the Jam, Turn It Up? Like this, they were total hip hop before they decided to, you know, go for the bag. You know,
no doubt. And then obviously also another guy, we kind of already mentioned him already throughout the podcast, but Master P, somebody who really gets I won't say he get credit, but he don't get enough credit as he should. You know, we talk about, we talk about Jay-Z, Puff's accomplishments, but like P was already doing this on different levels. Before them. Like, that's the thing. He, you know, who would have known from a malpractice, you know, lawsuit that, you know, because his grandfather, you know, died, $100,000 returned to one of the most successful independent rap labels, period. To the point where this man had an 80-20 deal. You're not gonna get that. Even then,
that's unheard of. I don't even think you're getting that now.
You know, once again, Priority Records and
albums every week.
I think that's the big knock against him, Renz. Like his business acumen, I would never dare challenge ever. I think it was the fact that you said, like Brandon, album every week, but like some were dope, some were like, who is this guy? Who is this? But it doesn't change the fact that he was on his grind in an era where like what he was doing when it was happening was unheard of. No one was doing that. I don't think there was anyone doing it at his level.
Yo, here's the Tyler Perry, man.
Actually,
I think that's except he didn't have to dress up as a woman, like
just in the sense of.
But here's the thing: we talk about the oversaturation, you know, as far as like because he was dropping like albums for everybody that half people didn't know about. But the thing, he took that same concept when we talk about like the E40s, the Too Shorts, 8-Ball MJG. They were selling music out of their trunks. You know what I mean? So he took that same concept and say, hey, since trunks saturate, I'm just gonna drop an album a month. You know, regardless of whether you might know this artist or not, but you know me, you know my label, and you know it just became
he embedded it in your mind. It's just like you went from who is this to now you have an idea. Like you go from unknown. Album. Well, yeah, I would have bought it just for the damn poster.
Album was trash.
It's a terrible thing to say during Women's Month, Ray. Come on, like
it was No Limit. You know, we had our No Limit chains in junior high school. Mayor C. Wright, shout out to Mayor. You know what I mean? Had No Limit chain. Like we were buying anything No Limit, like in 8th and 9th grade. You know what I mean? And you can't deny the power he had. And it was refreshing, Solange, having him commentate, you know, at Seat at the Table album. Because you kind of heard his story. You know how he said, hey, this label offered me $1 million, but if they offer me $1 million, I already know my thing's worth 20 or 40 million. You know, so he didn't sell so
to gauge his value. Like I guess he used it as a way to gauge because they're gonna lowball. Like he knew that. Like he had that business sense. All right, if they're starting here, then my shit's gotta be at least, you know.
And anybody else, we probably would have took the million. Like, $1 million? Oh, hey.
My dumb ass would have. That's why I've always said I'm a lousy businessman. That's why I don't own anything. I'm terrible with that. Shout out to Master P. Yeah, he's definitely somebody that I don't think has celebrated as the Diddy's and Jay's, and he was doing it like really before them. Pretty much, you know, he was Mr. Ice Cream Man, you know. I think I'm pretty sure he got to 100 mil before them. Yeah, shout out to Master P.
That's right. All right, so we'll move on here. So now we're looking at the present. We're looking at 2000 in the presents now. And so who do we feel is like now moving us forward?
Nobody.
You know, at this point, nobody.
Nobody. This is where we get negative, people.
He just hit the Keith Sweat. Nobody. See if we had the audio.
Oh man.
Not a damn soul.
So you know what? I would I had to actually kind of go. I don't completely disagree with Brandon. My picks are kind of like, so right, we're saying 2000 to present. There was a point in time where I could have said this answer a little bit more confidently. Early Kanye West. I loved everything he was doing. I felt from an artistic standpoint. He was like, I love when he said it. He's like, the fans want a feeling of a Tribe Called Quest, but all they got now is this guy called West. And when he was in that college dropout, you know, and we've said this in other episodes, you know, like that beginning run, especially those first 3 albums, he was showing that you could be at the forefront of hip hop and not have to be killing your community, selling poison to your community. Like, you could just be, and Kanye is an artistic creative, so he had his way of speaking on things. But I feel like pre-Hollywood tainted Kanye, I had to throw his name in here when we say 2000 and forward. I'm thinking more of like his early run. And I felt like not only him, but I felt like after he was being successful doing his style, I felt like you saw other artists trying to kind of mention like artistic approaches to creating music and stuff. Like, that was just my observation. I could be wrong, but I just felt like people, once they saw that was working, they were doing that as well. So, like I said, early Kanye, and I think somebody who's a little bit more recent, I think Kendrick Lamar. I have to say that in terms of making music, he showed, like, he debuted, on a mainstream level, right? Like, he pretty much makes a concept album every time. So he really, I feel, out of anybody in this new generation, especially the 2010s, my least favorite decade of hip hop, I will always make that known. He shows you can put art into music, and you can make your album conceptual, and you can talk about something, whether or not people agree with it or not, or want to hear it. He's showing that you can hold yourself to an artistic standard. And and he doesn't make music that sounds like any of his peers. Some people hate it, some people love it, but he does that. And I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't influenced by Kanye, especially in early Kanye West. So I would say Kanye, early era Kanye, and Kendrick Lamar are my two. But I agree with Brandon. It seems to kind of lighten up as you get to this part of the time frame.
Yeah. Definitely. And when you talk about like Kanye, especially that shift, and I think one thing that kind of always stood out to me was like when they had like the quote unquote album thing, between Kanye and 50, and how that shifted, because Kanye made it cool or made it acceptable that you can just rap about, be yourself fully. And hip hop always promoted that. But when we saw on a mainstream level, it's almost like you had to be an ultra street dude at certain times in order to to show that. And he's like, hey, you can be this college dropout kid like I was. You can be this dude that might be working a 9 to 5 and still be, have that love and that support. So definitely, but we know how Kanye is now, obviously, for sure.
And what's funny is with Kanye, even though I don't really like a lot of his recent output, someone like a super Kanye fan could argue, well, he's still pushing the envelope artistically, like, right, he's doing like the religious albums. Not my favorite, type of output from him. But the counter argument there could be like, well, you said he's pushing the envelope. It's just again, it's not my favorite output from him, but I mean, he still does that. It's just the celebrity factor kind of tainted a little bit, and that, what, that hasn't happened just for me with him. There was a time where I couldn't stand somebody who's less famous, Joe Budden, who has interesting input, but like sometimes he felt like he was a troll, and it was a shame because I felt like he would say some good stuff, but it would get lost in his antics, whether it's with the girls or whatever. So that has a way of diluting something that you might otherwise agree with, the celebrity aspect of it.
Right. But to piggyback, my answer, I'm gonna pick like one artist and group for both. And I had to like assess, because at the time I wasn't sure if this production group was moving it forward or not. And in hindsight, they were. I'm gonna go with the Neptunes. Very different, Nerd and NERD. Very different, at the time. It wasn't like they were, outcasts per se, but it was just something that it was way left field for us, so far as like soundscape is concerned. But then when they merge hip hop with Chad and Pharrell, and then Pharrell as a solo artist, and then NERD, and then the label with the Clips and Khalees, and and then now Pharrell is just like a mega. He's just
ageless wonder, like
vampire.
Yeah, safe to say, like, guys is like hip hop royalty, man. Like, and Pharrell's like, his essence is just so is the most impressive thing. Like, his accolades are ridiculous, but how this man is just so humble, and like his spirit is hip hop. He's one of those people that will like give a Q-Tip love but he's rocking out with like a drummer boy. You know, like he merges those decades and those eras, and he's just
even with Daft Punk, like he'll go like he'll go outer space right there, you know?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. So I'm gonna pick them for both because we're going 2000s to present. They were super active in the 2000s as the Neptunes, and then as later on to now, I would say Pharrell as an entity.
And he's still so talented. Anything he's on, I press play on. I think he's so talented, man. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah. And it's funny because I was rewatching the clip, from the Drink Champs with Pharrell earlier this week, and the Justified album and how he talked about like I made those songs tracks for Michael, and then doesn't get cursed out saying I want what you giving Noriega, like I want that Super Thug. You know what I mean? I want that
MJ over Super Thug. Oh my God, can you imagine? Damn.
Man, so definitely deep roots there, and how you talking about is like once we hit like the 2000 present, it seems like now it's been more about the branding, the marketing. So a lot of as far as we saw in the previous eras, as far as trying to have that balance of that plus, the social commentary and the other, accolades, it's kind of fizzled in a sense. But the two guys I'm looking at were Jay-Z and I'll start with Jay-Z first. Love him or hate him, like if we're looking at on a pure business thing, I mean, look what we just did with the deal with Hennessy and with the Ace of Spades and stuff.
He had a Henny deal?
Like, well, Hennessy Moet is the same.
Oh, okay.
So,
see, I wasn't lying when I told you I didn't drink before.
But he's a guy I think out of anybody we're looking at right now who says, you know what, I know the system's corrupt, but I can be as corrupt as this or even more. Like he knows how to work the system purely now. When we look at with stuff he did with Rock Nation, as far as even from the artist standpoint to now into sports and everything else, and the different deals he has done. Even like he's so part of Tidal, but now he has a seat now with with the bigger conglomerate companies with Foursquare. And the people didn't realize, okay, he's looking at a much bigger picture that we're looking at beyond the surface level. Yeah. We might not agree with everything he does.
Absolutely, yeah.
But look at the NFL right now. We were mad when he said the stuff about Kaepernick and everything.
He said we're past kneeling. I was like, why would you do that?
Probably not the best remark to say, but if we look,
because he's a billionaire. Billionaires are too disconnected.
But if we look at we'll look at the halftime shows, for example. When we look at the halftime shows since Jay has taken over, we had nothing but black and brown artists headlining these events now. Whether it was J-Lo, Shakira, whether it's The Weeknd, like he's looking at he's looking long term versus short term. We want that instant gratification where he's looking at like, hey, this might be slow burning, but it's gonna be worth it.
But he always was, like that's why the relationship with Jay and a lot of fans is convoluted because he was always thinking long term and not short term.
Yeah. So I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman.
Yeah.
And it gets no truth, and it gets no truer than that.
I think he just made I think in the last week, right? There was what you said, the deal with the Ace of Spade, right? Was it the Ace of Spade? And then with Tidal, and just using those loose numbers, like of what the thing sold for, he just made like I don't know what he walks away with, but I think those deals, what they sold for, total to it's like 600 million. Yeah. Like I don't know what his cut is, but I know I'm not seeing that in my lifetime. In my lifetime. Sorry. Had to throw it in there. Better days, B-Stacks. We love that volume 1. We all love that volume 1, right? Like,
great
era.
Yeah. So the next artist I'm going to use, and it's funny because it was so brief and short, but I still think it was very impactful, is Nipsey Hussle as my other guy.
Yes. Rest in peace.
As much as people try to make the correlation with Tupac and Kendrick, especially when Tupac was saying that, I'm not saying I'm going to be the one that's going to change the world, but I guarantee I will. We give you the brain that, the spawn, move forward. Well, not the exact quote, but paraphrasing. I think that was more so with Nipsey than Kendrick. I look at Nipsey as if, Nipsey's kind of shifting that forefront because we saw Tupac as far as the activism he was doing. He means son of a Black Panther on that movement. You see what Nipsey was doing within the community, like the STEM classes with the math and science, saying, hey, I want to keep this within the community to have them grow because we know we're product of our environments. You know what I mean? And him understanding that my people are not getting the same equal education. Let me bring safe workplaces so people can bounce out ideas.
Yeah, he was reinvesting in his community, man. He invested
directly into the community. We look at the strip mall where he used to get kicked out all the time, selling the CDs to come back and buy that strip mall. And then bring black businesses over here, saying, hey, we can be successful together. You know what I mean? To work within the government. And this goes back to like Eazy-E, like the political connection and tie, say, hey, this is what my people need. This is what we want to try to do to improve our environment, our situation, and him not denying his gang ties. Like, yeah, I'm rolling 60, but I want to move beyond that's the quote unquote street element. I want to, further invest, further develop, bring unity, within not only my gang, but gangs across the board. And seeing what he was trying to do. Well, he accomplished a lot, but unfortunately being taken out, over some pettiness, but let's see his mindset, where he was at. And that's the thing. He was trying to redo Dead Prez, Let's Get Free out. Say, I want to bring something for my generation.
Yeah, and it's important that he mentioned, obviously, like his gang ties, because it's like that's like the frowned upon part, but he's showing like, all right, but look what I've done since. It's not saying, hey, because I did this, you have to, but he's saying, hey, like I did start here, but like you can change your ways, you can evolve, you can make that pivot, you can move in the more righteous direction, so to speak. And he was just getting started. It's a shame that he went out that way.
Yeah.
So shout out to Nip. Yeah, that was he was just getting started, and he was even doing he wanted to do documentary on Dr. Sebi, right? And that's just about health. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody's really doing that, and his light was extinguished way too soon, I'll say.
Yeah, definitely. But a lot of good information here. We were trying to do it for February, but Black History is 365.
This content is relevant, any time of the year.
Any time of the year. So I know we need to wrap things up, but gentlemen, any plugins? I know we got an episode coming in 2 weeks. Brandon, you want to give shed some light for the listeners?
Yes, sir. For March Women's Month, we're going to do, I know we had the 96 draft previous, so we're going to do the ladies, female MCs draft, all evers. So Ray got the crown, Ray got the chip. So we gotta be competitive. We gotta.
Yes.
I'm trying to go for my 3-peat. This is number 2 right here.
Same format. You guys are gonna have a chance to vote. We're gonna do all female MCs in 2 weeks, y'all.
Very much looking forward to that one, man. I don't have anything to add to that. Y'all definitely put me onto stuff today as far as just like some of the historical elements of hip hop. So I always consider myself a student, man.
Iron sharpens iron, each one teach one. That's the beauty about this podcast, because we're all know information, but it's always something we'll bring up and like, oh, I didn't know this, or I didn't know the level to this. So it's always about learning, always about evolving, for sure. But obviously people who are, streaming, catch us to Buzzsprout, Spotify, Amazon Music. We're getting all the episodes uploaded and caught up. So you can definitely catch us on all platforms across the board. But with that said, we're going to wrap things up. We'll catch y'all about 2 weeks. We signing off now. Tres Leches. Peace.
Peace.
Yes.